What's up, everybody? It's Rank Week here at DNVR, and we're counting down the 25 best games in Denver sports history. And this is a special edition of the Denver Sports Podcast. We are in the Toyota Lounge, driven by your Front Range Toyota stores. Toyota, the official vehicle of DNVR. We've got Vic Lombardi, AJ Hayfley, and Jeff Morton in the house. We hope you enjoy it. See you on the other side. This is exactly how it works. What is up, everybody, and welcome into the Toyota Lounge for a very, very special edition of the Denver Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Matas. I've assembled a great collection of historians, Nuggets fans, aficionados, and experts.
How tan I am.
You are very tan.
Compared to these whiteys over here.
Look how pasty I am.
Look at that. That's pretty impressive. That is pretty good.
Dude, I'm more Hispanic than you are.
Sadly, probably true. Probably true. We're talking about the greatest games in Denver sports history. I have an expert on all things Denver sports, but especially Colorado Avalanche, AJ Hayfley.
What up, yo?
How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm just packing.
There you go.
All my life is packing.
Packing heat? What are you packing?
Packing to move.
Oh.
Yeah.
Maybe packing heat, though, too.
Yeah, what could be?
The feisty one over here won't keep his mouth shut for the introduction.
Sorry.
From Altitude Television, Vic Lombardi.
Nice to be here. It's always a pleasure to be here.
It's glad to
You know
have
how
you,
much
man.
I value what you guys do. I really love it.
And then rounding out the show, another historian, both of Denver Nuggets lore, but also of Denver sports history, 80s metal bands, and the like, Jeff Morton.
I'm wearing a Denver Stiff shirt for the people who get the OG-ness of it, so...
Absolute OG, one of the founders of blogging in general. The very first blogger. The internet came
You're
out and
probably
Jeff
right.
was there.
Yeah. How long ago was that?
16 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
Before it was called blogging.
It was when the Denver we were getting cease and desist emails from the Denver Post. So that's
Were
how
they
long
really?
Yeah.
I got a great story I want to share with you on that later.
It's always funny, though, that you say that, because whenever there is a new technology, that is the first thing, is everyone's like, well, this isn't legal. What is
Can I quickly share this story?
Let's hear it.
Yeah.
When I was a senior in college at Notre Dame, I had a buddy of mine he's the smartest man I know. He was my roommate. He retired years ago. He's one of those guys, a visionary. So he came to me and said, hey, you do the media stuff with the football team? I go, yeah. He goes, I got an idea. This was pre-internet. All we had is fax machines. He goes, how about we send a fax to the Notre Dame alumni on Friday nights, get them up to date on the latest injuries and all that. You write it, and I'll get the alumni list, and I'll fax it out. We'll call it the Irish Football Fax. It was the advent of the internet, essentially. So we did this for 2 weeks, and the university shut us down. And guess what happened after the university shut us down?
What's that?
They started doing exactly that.
This is how it works. Everybody
how it
looks
works.
at it as like, that's a powerful tool. We have to get rid of it. We have to block it entirely. It is funny how that stuff happens. Our topic today is a good one, though. We're doing Rank Week here at DNVR. Last year we did it on the greatest athletes in Colorado sports history. Spoiler alert, John Elway won. He was number one. Mm-hmm. But it was fun to go back and look at all the athletes who made a big mark on the game. This year we're doing the greatest games. And I'm going to start at what I think is a little bit of a lob question. I'm going to start with Vic, since you're the OG one here. What is the greatest game in Colorado sports history, and why?
I need to know what are the measure? What are you measuring here? Is the importance of the game? Is it just the game in its essence, the competitive nature of the game? What do you win from the game? Give me a little...
I think it has to be everything, right?
Okay.
So what makes a great game? A preseason game is a phenomenal game. It doesn't mean anything. So a postseason game is going to factor into it.
Yeah.
Legacy, the fallout from that game, what it all meant. But obviously, there might be some regular season games that end up making it on our list, but I'm guessing it's going to skew more to playoffs.
Okay. I'm going to be old here, and I'm going to go to one of the greatest games I'd ever witnessed. And what it did to the city is open up an avenue that it had never seen before. And I'm going to go to the 1977, at the time it was 76, AFC Championship game, Broncos and Raiders, where they took the goalposts from Mile High Stadium, and they took them down Federal Boulevard. They flooded the field. In the game, if you're a Raiders fan, you believe that the Broncos should have lost because Rob Lytle fumbled.
Yeah.
They didn't have instant replay back then. The Broncos had beaten the Raiders, had gotten past the. It's sort of like the Nuggets and Lakers when you get past that one team. The
Yes.
Broncos had gotten past the Raiders and legitimized themselves as a true power of the AFC, and it opened the window. It really did. Denver became a pro sports city after that game.
I love this answer. First of all, January 1st, 1978. So
Was
you
it-
were right,
Okay,
but you were
Wrong
wrong.
year.
One day
Yeah,
later.
It's the year I was born.
20-17, and it was their first Super Bowl appearance. So I like this one. Obviously, none of us are alive for this, AJ, but I do love the history that predates us in terms of making it to the championship game is oftentimes the first, like a check mark, and being a Super Bowl team. I kind of like this as an
they
answer.
had a parade for that.
Did they really?
They held a parade.
In seven- really?
Oh, there was a parade. Oh, yeah.
So they make it to the Super Bowl, get absolutely demolished.
There was a parade even before and after the game for being there, being in the game. The amount of people that showed up at Stapleton Airport to say goodbye and to wish the Broncos back, you'd be astounded. It still felt like a small town back then. It isn't the Denver of today.
Yep.
And yet, what's funny about this one is this is not a game when he started going off script, right? Because I thought you were going to say Super Bowl 32. We'll talk
No.
about it in a second. When he starts going off, I didn't know where you'd go. This is not a game that's in my lore. Is it in yours?
I mean, it's hard because it happens 10 years before I'm born.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
impossible for you guys to understand.
I have
what-
6
no
years for me.
appreciation for
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
but like I can respect and appreciate its importance to the city
Yeah.
and its history. But for me personally, I have no personal connection there, so it doesn't do much for me.
What about you, Jeff? Which game would you nominate here?
Well, I have a lot. I could go through a litany of Nuggets games, but this is a Broncos town, so I will say the drive has to be really high on this. I did watch that personally.
Yeah.
I experienced the anxiety of the 98-yard drive. It was tremendous. It is one of those indelible images that is not only a Denver thing,
Yeah.
but it's a national thing. People in Cleveland still hate John Elway because
Yeah.
of that thing. I honestly think that it really, to me, that is the, and it's weird not to pick Super Bowl 32 and the helicopter and all that, but that game was kind of, had an even pace to it.
Yeah.
It didn't have a lot of tension to it. The drive was just such a fundamental marker on Denver, both historically, and it was a good game.
Can I change my vote?
Let me hear it.
It's the drive.
Really?
Yeah, it's the drive.
This is incredible. That was bigger.
Yeah, it's
Compare
the drive.
two to
Yeah,
me.
and here's why. There were so many twists and turns in the drive, and the national television audience made it. And Elway became Elway at the drive. That's
a
when he
fable.
became Elway,
Yeah.
right? Before that, it was just this blonde, first-round quarterback, top overall pick. Let's see what he can do. He became Elway,
Yes.
and it started an amazing run. I'm going to change my pick mid-show to the drive. And I never really, when the way you said it, the way you sold it to me, it makes perfect sense. More people were impacted by the drive than they were that 77.
Really?
Yeah.
So tell me, what was Bronco fandom like before the 77 game or 78 game, as it were?
It really was one of those, hey, woe is me type franchises.
Oh, okay.
I mean, we sucked.
Yeah.
We couldn't beat the Raiders. We couldn't get out of our own way.
It wasn't real. It
No,
wasn't-
and then
yeah.
Red Miller showed up, and then all of a sudden this defense was really good. And like, is this real? I mean, honest to God, no one thought it was real, and then they won, and the franchise changed. But the drive, the reason why I think that's the bigger game is because the game itself.
Yeah.
The game itself. I mean, are you kidding me? Backed up to your 2-yard line, you got a quarterback running with his head cut off, firing a ball to Mark Jackson, who's flying in the. I mean, this is crazy. Field goal, extra point that looked like it may have missed, and you'll
Yes.
never know if it did or not.
Yes. I actually remember thinking at the time, I was like, when that went right
Yeah.
over. I mean, if it didn't miss, it went right over the
Yeah.
goalpost. But
You know, this is a weird one because we're coming off of a Nuggets championship, and then the Nuggets fan base, I feel, this offseason is in a real dark place. Very upset, I think they're very anxious about it. And I wonder,
Angsty.
like, have we lost their ability to enjoy? You're talking about a two wins in the AFC championship game that led to blowout losses, catastrophic losses.
Yeah.
We lost the ability to enjoy the little wins?
Not me.
Yeah.
Not me. I mean, because I know how hard it is to win
Yeah.
a championship.
He beat
And
the
I've-
Lakers this year. I
Yeah.
always say, like, this year, but it felt like it was a disaster for the Nuggets. They should have done
Yeah.
more. You beat the Lakers with 2-game winners. That should be an all-timer.
I'm just telling you, when the Nuggets won their championship, bury me now. I mean,
Yeah, you're done.
and I'm not joking. When I told you that back then, They could win 8 more championships and nothing will matter.
Yeah.
Like the first. That's just the way it is. And I don't know if you have the same reaction to the Avs when they won their first. Their first one was just out of thin air, though.
Yeah.
They just arrived. I mean, I don't think anybody expected that.
Yeah, the 96 Cup win was kind of like, what's hockey?
Yeah.
Hey, they won a championship.
Yeah.
This is easy. And they like sneak in, just barely beat the Broncos for first
First
championship in Denver, and they've been there for 1 year. So the whole thing was like a weird ride. And in historical context, you're looking at one of the great teams in Colorado sports history, and their accomplishment was incredible, and the rivalry with Detroit that started, and you couldn't ask for a better way to start a hockey fandom in a city that didn't have it before.
Do you recall what the Avs fan base was like before and after that one? Because you talk about big
Well,
seminal moments.
it was only 6 months old.
Oh, yeah.
So the fan base, the hockey fan base in Denver, I go back to the Colorado Rockies, the original Rockies. Right. It was more of a minor league fan base, because the Rockies were, you buy $1 beer at the old Coliseum and enjoy hockey. It was a different type of clientele. When the Avs arrived, it was a more professional brand of hockey, and it showed in the way they played.
Right.
All right. So I like how we have done this. I actually like how this is flowing. 78 becomes the seminal moment. It's a real team now. The drive is like Elway is the guy. So now we have an arc. Not only is this a real team, but now we have the guy that's going to get us there, we hope. But to me, it's Super Bowl 32, which is the real culmination of this. And the reason is, first of all, double-digit underdogs going into the game.
Yeah.
It's the end of Elway's career. I think that Elway to me has like a top 5 or 10 all-time arc just as an athlete in terms of it happened at the very end. He had to go through all the suffering, and was he ever going to get it? So you have the highest stakes possible for an individual. You have the highest stakes possible for a Broncos era, because as you mentioned, the drive, all that stuff was building up to we have a guy, we have faith, and you're at the end of it. And there were so many iconic moments and plays, and it was a great game. You had Brett Favre on the other end, and to get that one, to me, those ones that I love the answers because they were set up, but it's still the setup is not as good as the payoff. And Super Bowl 32 to me is the ultimate Denver sports payoff.
Well, I agree with you on the payoff. I would argue though that the drive game was a better game.
It was a better game.
It just had everything. Plus, it was a road game.
But Game of 32 or Super Bowl 32 was a good game.
It was a good game.
It was an A game.
It lacked a certain amount of drama, I guess, even though it came down to the last drive by the Packers. The most notable moment in Super Bowl 32 is the helicopter thing. And it was just John Elway trying to go for a third down conversion or second down conversion. And that is, but the drive, talk about just drama, tension on a national stage. You couldn't get bigger than that. Other than winning in the Super Bowl for the Broncos, then that's where Denver went through from a minor league town to more in people's eyes.
You have to understand something too. For those of you today, if you're watching a football game and a team rallies and a team marches from the 2-yard line and scores, everyone's like, "Yeah, that didn't happen back then."
Right.
Yeah. Okay, it didn't. What you saw that was like no chance. There's no way this team is going from their own 2 in the doghouse on an opposing field to the other end zone with whatever time was left on the clock.
Right.
It was just incomprehensible. That's what made it, to me, the most important game.
So we're talking about drama, but I really feel like Super Bowl 32 is being grossly undersold here because
I was at the game. I was at 32.
You're talking about you have multi-MVP winning Brett Favre, the defending champion Packers. You give the ball back to them. They open up the hole. They let TD run through because they have faith that Brett Favre's going to get it done for them. That's not tension. It's like the guy in the NFL at the time because John Elway was older. He was at the end of his career.
Right.
It was like peak Brett Favre, and that's I don't know. I remember being extremely stressed out on that drive.
Same with me. And here's the part that I think, and this is what makes a great game. When you are the team that never gets it done and always collapses, which Denver was at this time, and even the Broncos, it was like, will they ever get over the hump? Right. Even when you're up 1 score. And there's time on the clock. You just keep thinking, like, I know how this ends. They're underdogs. They've got the lead, but this is going to come down to blown. And that's why, to me, I never felt like it was a bad game. I always felt like every single second of it mattered, and every play could have flipped it on a dime. And so that's why I think it was great.
It's funny because I'm going to ask you guys a question. How old were you when Super Bowl 32 happened?
14.
How old are you?
11.
11. So you were around the same age I was when I saw The Drive. I think I was 16.
So maybe this is part of it.
I think it hits harder when you're a child.
Yes.
This is the
When you're a
conversation we had about arcade.
I think it hits
earlier in
harder. I really do.
Nebraska.
When Super Bowl 32, I was working in the media. I covered the game. So it's hard for me to take a step back and see it in that viewpoint. Those games when I was a child, it just hits differently.
Yeah.
It just does.
When I saw that stood with me for the entire time I was with a Broncos fan, still am, is what you see in your memory and what you see in your mind's eye is John Elway throwing that low pass to Mark Jackson on 3rd and 2 at the 5-yard line.
Over the linebackers, outstretched hands.
Over the hand, and he gets a such. That's what I see when I think of the Broncos. That's burned into my brain.
Yeah.
A lot like for me with the Denver Nuggets, it's the 1994 team in Matoma going like this. There are certain things that are just burned into your brain, and that's mine.
It is interesting. I still think, and I'm so curious to hear now. We're doing this rank week. It's going to be out for the public to kind of see it. I'm so curious now if there's more consensus, because I'll be honest, I thought this would be one of those ones where it was like, okay, everybody knows what number 1 is, what's number 2.
Yeah.
But I'm surprised that our panel is as split as we are on it.
Well, we haven't even talked about game 163, Rockies
Correct.
and Padres,
Yep.
which to me
Love
had everything you want in a sporting
God.
event. It was make or break.
Yep.
It was back and forth. It was the most ridiculous rally in extra innings. It was a play at the plate. It was you. I can't even fit all the crap in that game into one paragraph because it was nuts to me.
And the momentum leading into it, too. Like, this is a build-up towards that game. So, what else? Sell me on 163. Is it the second best game in history? Or third?
I think I would have it lower because I would have Game 7 in 2001 for the Avs beating the Devils. It's Waugh versus Brodeur. It's the defending champion Devils. It's the Avs talked all year, the President's Trophy winning Avs on a mission 16W. It's Ray Bourque's final game. It's his last chance. 22nd year in his career as one of the top 3 defensemen of all time.
Yeah.
It's everything. The number of Hall of Fame players who played in that game alone is astronomical. And to get that job done, and you have one of the most iconic moments in NHL history, not Avalanche or Colorado sports history, but NHL history, belongs to the Avs with Ray Bourque lifting the cup.
Right.
Joe Sakic passing it over to him, eschewing tradition to give a teammate the cup and not be the first guy as the captain to raise the Stanley Cup and skate with it.
AJ,
it's iconic.
I hate to interrupt you, but I would argue that Game 6 is the reason Game 7 happened, and Game 6 was the bigger game. Because if
you had to have it.
When they won Game 6, I was like, they're going to win the cup. They're bringing it home.
And that's
when
Patrick
win
Long
that game.
winning that game,
Yes.
out-dueling Brodeur in New Jersey, Chris Drury with the moments that he made in that game. I mean, emotionally, I've always bundled them together, but you're not wrong in that when they won Game 6, there was no way they were losing Game 7.
It was
and
over.
they win that game, I don't want to say easily, but, a 3-1 game that they never trail in.
That's why it's so hard to talk about series playoffs.
Yeah.
Because all the games feed off each other, right?
Yep.
It's not like the NFL where every game is its own entity. You don't have the magic of Game 7 without winning Game 6, and Game 6 is when they won that series.
Yeah, and it's just Game 7. It's got its own mystique about it in itself. And Alex Tanguay is an Avalanche legend forever because of that. The rest of his career did not matter in Colorado.
Skating behind the net, turning, and was it top shelf, right?
Yeah, it puts it over Brodeur's shoulder, who's falling over. Yeah, and then he gets the second goal in transition off of a rebound. I mean, that's the stuff, though. That's Game 7 in the series sports. It hits so differently.
Well, it has some of the ingredients that you're talking about of what make these things great. And you're right. We were talking about this earlier about what sport lends itself to the most iconic games. And I think it is football for that reason.
Sure.
There's not many. The stakes are high. And there's a lot of tension. Like, I think football has the best pacing. I love when people compare soccer as the best sport to watch in football. And I'm always like, football's so great because it's this 10-second burst of just complete anxiety and then 30 seconds of preparing for the next one.
Yeah.
And so football lends itself to that. But you are right, because we were talking about this. When I asked earlier today what was the best Nuggets game they remember, a lot of people said Game 5 of the finals. And I thought, not that good of a game.
That was an ugly game, man. That was a survivor game. That was like Jesus, everybody's missing shots. Just the last team to miss a shot, to play defense, that was not a poetic game.
It was well played and hard fought and ugly and unmemorable. And there were other games in that series, but to your point, in football there is no series. There's a game. And in basketball, it kind of runs together as one story, even though they're not. They're different games.
You know, I'll make the same argument I made with the Avs Game 6. The Denver Nuggets won the NBA Finals when they won in L.A. Game 4. Coming back from 16 down at the half. Was it 16 or 15?
I think it was before
15.
that, Vic.
I think, but
I thought it was game 3.
That's fine. But that series,
Yeah.
that they won the NBA Finals after beating LA.
That was the game of the playoffs for me. That was
Game
that
4?
Was it. Game 4 was the game of the playoffs.
Well, I mean, because you're at halftime, you're like, they're going to drop a game to them, and then all of a sudden, wait, they're not dropping anything.
Slowly and methodically reeling them in the third quarter, and Jokic just having absolute mastery of the game like he did. And that drive that he went to put the Nuggets up 2.
Drops it off to KCP. He gets fouled, I believe.
No.
I'm
talking about the layup when he scored to put the Nuggets up 2. It was the game-winning shot that Jokic hit. Him driving, nudging Anthony Davis out of the way, flipping it up there. That's one of the best shots in Nuggets history.
One of the things that I remember most about that game was, to me, I didn't. The reason I thought it was game 3 that they did it. LeBron's game 4 to me, I think he would have not played game 5. I think that he used all energy reserved he had. Yeah. In fact, he used it in the first half. But you could just saw in that game, LeBron still had his best punch, but he only had it for a half.
Yeah.
And his best punch wasn't that much better than Jokic's best punch on managing the game in the first half. And when that third quarter hit, it was one of those things where it was like, oh, LeBron's not the best. He's only good enough to do this for a little while. Jokic can do this for 48 minutes, and he just started doing it in the second half to where you were like, he's gonna dethrone him on this.
One thing that is seared into my brain, I'll never forget, that game 4, the final seconds, I am right behind the backboard where LeBron was driving to the hole. And I'm sitting there waiting to jump onto the court. And I thought for sure they were going to call Jamal for a foul. I thought for sure, because it's LeBron.
The block, you're saying?
It's LeBron. Well, he sort of knocked it out of his hand. And the way LeBron reacted like this, I was like, okay, he's buying that foul. I was like, all right, where's the whistle? And then if you go back and look at it, all the players were like, wait, there's no whistle. They waited. They waited a second or two.
Yeah.
There's no whistle. We just won.
Yeah.
And then it was pandemonium.
Yeah. And the other thing that game had that's a key ingredient, the Nuggets, for whatever reasons, really wanted to sweep the Lakers. There was a hatred of them, and I think it goes back to the bubble. But you know what? It might just go back to sometimes a team absorbs the history, and I do wonder if there was a part of this of like, okay, the Nuggets always lose to the Lakers. Mm-hmm. We got to break that. We have an opportunity here. But I think the rivalry part of all of this is such a big part of it. And that's why you talk about the Devils and it being Brodeur and Noir. That's part of this, right? Is like there was a good enough rivalry there.
Wait, are we just going to gloss over the Red Wings Avs?
Well, we're setting up to get here because I think
because you want to talk about games that will live in infamy. Yeah. Some of those games, the blood spilled in those games, in those playoffs, they've done documentaries.
Is it the greatest rivalry in Colorado sports?
It's not even close.
Really? Not even close.
It's second place would be probably Broncos, Raiders, CU, Nebraska.
Yeah.
But here is Avs, Red Wings, and everything else is down here.
Yeah.
Because of the personal nature of that rivalry. It was personal.
Yeah.
It wasn't sports.
Yeah.
It was personal.
So what's the best game in the rivalry?
I like to think of it as Game 6 in '96, where they knock Detroit out, and you have the Lemieux Draper hit. You have Chris Draper gets his face rearranged. If he could get it rearranged again, it'd be great. It kicks off just such a wonderful. It not really kicks off. It was like the culmination of that series, because that series had everybody got stitches, everybody got hurt. It was ugly, and that's what made it great. But that was a 62-win team. That was an NHL record-breaking Detroit team. And this was just a team in Colorado that nobody knew anything about at the time. It just moved from Quebec City. And
so early in the rivalry, though.
Yeah, it starts it, but it sets up everything that comes next. Fight night at the Joe. Waugh fighting multiple goalies. He tried to get it all three of them at one point. All of that starts because what Claude Lemieux does to Chris Draper.
Let me ask you a question about Claude Lemieux, because we liked him here. He's the kind of player, if he played for another team, he'd be the biggest villain in town, right?
Yeah, I mean,
he's that guy.
in hockey, in modern day hockey, he's Brad Marchand. He's beloved in the city in which he plays and hated 1 inch outside of that city.
So.
Of course.
If I look at it through their prism,
of course.
rightfully so. I have no qualms with that, but he's ours, so he's fine. It's
Absolutely.
like Romanowski.
Absolutely. Claude Lemieux was that guy, but he was also what made him elevate above a guy like Romanowski is he was better in the postseason than was in the regular season. Really good regular season player, but come playoffs, you needed Claude Lemieux.
Yeah.
Who are other guys? Who the Romanowski All-Stars? Who are some other players that were like, we only loved them because they were our guy?
Oh man, there's a long list of those kind of players in town. I mean,
Reggie Evans.
well, Kenyon Martin wasn't exactly beloved,
Oh, yeah.
and hell, there were some Denver fans that didn't like him either.
Yeah.
Kenyon, I remember Kenyon shoving Dirk into the first
Play of the game. First play of the game of the series was like,
I
hey,
love
man.
it. It set the tone for that entire series. I loved it.
Such a funny one. I don't know, though. He wasn't as hateable as like a Romanowski, I don't feel.
No.
He was a little physical, but-
Romo played with an edge, and that edge was very evident, and he took it everywhere he played, and that's just the way he played.
Yeah.
But when he's
Well,
on your team, you love it.
There was the spitting, it's J.J. Stokes,
Sure.
98.
Sure.
But, can I submit something here?
Let me hear it.
No, I don't want to derail us. but
We're just talking.
As far as game and drama goes, some of those CU Nebraska games from the late 80s were about as filled with drama as you could get.
Yeah.
Particularly, our friend, may he rest in peace, Les Shapiro, called a lot of those games on Channel 4. And he called the 5th down game, which is what still, to me, the most absurd game I've ever seen in my life.
Refs just lose count, give an extra play.
Can you imagine if that happened today? No. Well, it couldn't today, right?
No.
That can't happen.
No,
today.
it couldn't. It couldn't happen now. But the game the next year.
Well, actually, you say that, but did you see there was an NBA game this year that had it was a
they
Lakers
had
game? It was a minute and 30 seconds extra where the clock didn't move. A minute there. It might have even been a playoff game if I'm not mistaken. I don't remember late season or playoff game. A minute 30, the clock doesn't move. There's 10 points scored and nobody noticed.
Wasn't there a WNBA game where they had the line? The line was too long. And
they drew
the line too long, and then like halftime they go, "Oh, we messed up. Sorry."
Well, this happened this year in the in-season tournament. Adam Silver, one of those colorful courts, and it was late coming in, and a lot of these places, it was like day of they were arriving, and same thing. The 3-point lines were messed up so we could have a colorful court.
I will say just as far as the CU Nebraska thing, CU Nebraska 1990 in the rain in Lincoln, one of the best gutsy games I've ever seen.
Eric
in my life.
Bieniemy alone.
Eric Bieniemy scores 4 touchdowns in the second half,
downpour.
fourth quarter, basically, and then overcoming fumbling 4 times. And that's still one of the. It's burned into my brain as far as that goes.
Weather's another one of these X factors, and it only was really football and baseball, but it adds an extra element of mystique around it. What about the Michigan Miracle Hail Mary game?
Oh my God!
Yeah, I was in Austin, Texas when that happened, and CU came to Austin the following week. So I remember doing story after story about that. That was one of those games where all right, something magical's happened. That team, that CU team.
It's one of the best teams.
In my opinion, may have been better than the national championship team. And they
More
didn't win
talented.
a national championship. The amount of NFL players on that team
it's
is
insane.
sick.
Insane.
Sick. They just couldn't get it done.
Yeah.
But that game was that throw, again, when you parse a game down to one play, those are always going to be up there.
Yeah, I guess maybe those are more plays than it is a whole game.
Yeah.
And it's funny, there was one of my favorite videos ever made. ESPN, I don't know if anybody remembers this. At the end of the year 2000, they made a video called Images of Our Century, and it was basically a montage of the greatest sports moments in history. Yeah. There was only 2 or 3 Denver ones on the entire list, because all sports all time. That one was on. The Hail Mary is on there.
But what else do you remember from that Hail Mary game?
Nothing. I mean,
I'm
young
I remember
at this
that
time.
they were down by like 10 points with about 3 minutes to go, and that's how they got it.
Yeah.
They scored a touchdown, got the ball back, and then the Hail Mary. But
Sometimes that's what it takes.
It's one of those things, though. I mean, that 94 burned into my brain.
Yeah.
Same year as the Nuggets over Sonics, and Nuggets almost beating the Jazz the next series. So,
Are there any other Rockies ones that make it into the list?
ugh.
Because a lot of the Rockies ones are not like. There's the moment you win the NLCS. That's a big game, but big moment.
Yeah.
I don't know if the game qualifies.
There was a Rockies regular season game in which they scored 9 runs in the bottom of the 9th to rally to win the game. It was the most ridiculous comeback I'd ever witnessed at Coors Field.
Yeah.
And I can't even remember who it was against.
St. Louis.
Was it? Mm-hmm. I just remember 9 runs. I was like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
But that's, you get that craziness in Coors.
Yeah.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah. Also, baseball lends itself to those types of, the rally. It lends itself to this moment of like, oh my God, here it goes. The pitcher has to then, be out on the mound.
There's another one during the run in 2007 against the Dodgers. Todd Helton hits that game.
Father's Day, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that was a Father's Day game.
Hits that game-winning home run.
That was magical.
And it was really late at night.
And he just goes like, yeah.
And it was another
emotion.
great moment. And it was good for, Todd Helton, who's going into the Baseball Hall of Fame here soon. And it was another great moment. A lot of the run in 2007, I remember, but there were some games in the 90s that were great. When they won the wild card to go to the playoffs, not the wild card, but they
played Atlanta in...
They played Atlanta in the wild card, and they got swept 3-0. And I do remember, though, to get into it, the last game of the season, they beat the Giants. Kurt Liskanek gets that. He was the well, he wasn't the closer, but he gets out the last out, and then Walking on Sunshine, because his cousin was the singer of Katrina and the Waves.
Really?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So they're playing I'm Walking on Sunshine as the all the team just flows onto the field.
It's funny, though. You mentioned all these games. Nothing even approaches game 163.
Yep.
And it wasn't even a playoff game. That wasn't a real playoff game.
It was, though.
But I know, but officially it's not.
Yeah.
And yet it meant more than, I think, all of those games that preceded it and after it, because you don't get into the playoffs without it.
So the reason I brought up baseball, though, because you also have the Arenado cycle game. There was some great game where the last play completes both a win and an incredible moment.
The wild card game in Chicago that went extra innings.
Oh, that was a great one. Yep.
Kyle Freeland was unbelievable.
Yes. That was the one where, God, who got a... They couldn't hit. Nobody can get anybody over. I remember I would scream at the television, bunt! Somebody bunt! Move the guy over! And I can't remember who it was that finally moved him over. And it was a little-known player, but that's how it works in the playoffs.
Yeah, I just remember Tony Walters had the game-winning RBI in that. And
that's who it was, yes.
Tony Walters. Guy hit 200.
That's exactly who it was.
Let's take a break real quick and tell you about the presenting sponsor of our show today, Toyota. Whether you're driving up Trail Ridge Road, one of my favorite drives in all of Colorado, or Kebler Pass perhaps, or maybe the $1 Million Highway, you want to find yourself in a Toyota, the official vehicle of DNVR. You've got the Tacoma, which is absolutely gorgeous. Maybe the coolest truck in the world. You want a bigger one, you got the Tundra. You got the Highlander for families, RAV4 for bopping around town, and of course those new Land Cruisers that are absolutely incredible. If you haven't seen them, Google now. You're going to fall in love, as I have. Toyota has all the great cars. I think they're the unofficial vehicle of Denver, and this being the Denver Sports Podcast, of course, it's a fitting sponsor for us. Right now, you want to visit your Front Range Toyota stores at a location near you. AutoNation Toyota in Arapahoe and Centennial, Corwin Toyota in Boulder, Groove Toyota in Littleton, Mountain States Toyota in Denver, that's my neck of the woods, Stevenson Toyota East in Aurora, and Stevenson Toyota West in Lakewood. Also want to tell you about Bet365. You know what they do? Nothing ordinary. They believe in every sport should be epic, just like all of the games on our list. And right now, new customers can choose between 2 offers when they open an account at Bet365. You use that promo code DNVR365 to sign up, and you deposit $10, and you can choose between either bet and get offer and place a bet of $5 or more and get $150 in bonus bets, or first bet safety net offer by placing a bet up to $1,000, and if your qualifying bet loses, you receive a matched refund and bonus bets. That's an unbelievable deal. Risk a lot. You get a lot in that no sweat bet payback, which is absolutely incredible. So download the Bet365 Never Ordinary Sportsbook app right now and use that promo code DNVR365 whenever you sign up. Must be 21 or older and physically located in Colorado. Please gamble responsibly. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, now let's get back to the Denver Sports Podcast. So what game, this is my question, because I think baseball kind of naturally lends itself to good games, and football, I think, more than any other sport, lends itself to good games. Basketball, we were thinking about this, but basketball when you think about the greatest games, you just Google the greatest games in NBA history, they're often through the lens of an individual. Jordan's flu game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's almost like, was the game good, but it was an iconic performance. And I love basketball. It's my favorite sport to watch. I think it has the highest average. Like an average game is going to be really high. But I do wonder if, like, when we start to think about what's the most iconic basketball game ever played, you just automatically go to an individual. Magic starting at center.
Yeah. I mean, David Thompson going up against George Gervin in the
73.
final game of the season to see who
73.
would win the scoring title. That became not even a game. It was just an individual matchup, a game within the game, right?
And he beat him by percentage points.
Yes, he
Just
did.
Small percentage points. I do, like, for the Nuggets, I mean, sue me, 94 is like the one I always go back to. But Game 6 against the Utah Jazz, they come back from down 0-3.
0-3.
And this is the game that they get to Game 7. And Brian Williams has a left-handed dunk in the fourth quarter. Crowd goes, I mean, McNichols, when it got loud. I was there, sitting at the top.
Were you at that game?
Yes,
Wow.
sitting at the top. The crowd goes nuts, absolutely nuts. I feel like my ears are going to bleed. That's how loud it was. And it was one of the best moments I've ever seen. I went and saw that game recently, and I thought it was one of the greatest games I've ever seen. One of the worst played games I have ever
I have to go back and see that. I mean, you know what? You know what we're overlooking too. You know what we're overlooking? We're really overlooking Game 7 Utah bubble because no fans were involved. But
Oh, right.
just the way that game ended was, I mean, it was borderline ridiculous.
I can only think Torrey Craig. Like,
It was
screaming
borderline.
no at the top of my lungs.
Michael Malone was talking about this the other day. Remember when we were in that little group and he said just the little things that happened. And people forget Rudy Gobert stepped out of bounds before he passed it up the court.
Yeah, he mentioned that, and I had kind of forgotten that detail. It was chaos. I mean, that was 10, 15 seconds of just pure chaos.
And there's no way to overturn that because there's no whistle blown.
So if you think about the chain reaction, Gary Harris's extension on the steal was so perfect. He came in, it was almost like a defensive back that knows the play, and he's like, I'm going to break on it early. He gets a finger
good
on the
point.
ball, tips it, and you're just thinking, this is unbelievable. And yes, Jamal Murray, for some reason,
you know what,
gets
Adam?
the ball up.
You played enough basketball to know this. I think Gary, because remember, they inbounded it and then they had to re-inbound it, and he had a conversation with somebody. He purposely moved himself to the right side of Donovan Mitchell, knowing that Donovan Mitchell was going to try and move around him this way. He set
He knew
that
it,
play up.
like a defensive back.
He
I'm
set
telling
it
you.
up.
And what's funny about that is, if you remember, Gary Harris didn't come back, I believe, until Game 6, and he didn't start, and I don't think he played until the second quarter of Game 6. And Donovan Mitchell's averaging 50 points a game through that to that point, and I think he scored 30 points in the final game and the 3 quarters of that. So it was like 7 quarters of Gary Harris in that series, and Donovan Mitchell was shut down, including on that play. It was an underrated detail of that series.
You know what I remember from that Game 7? Is that the Nuggets won like 82-80 or something like that?
82 to 79, maybe.
And
maybe you're right.
Jokic had 30 of them.
Yeah.
Those points. No one could score. in
And
that game.
incredibly clutch as well. He came up with, I think, 2 very clutch baskets when it was just a brick fest both ways, and it was like, all right, it's time to win. Jump hook over Gobert, by the way, which is most players
I
that would be
remember
the
that
worst
play.
option, and
Yep.
he shot it off the back leg as if it was like, I know exactly where I have to go on it.
That was a series where he solved Gobert.
Solved
because
him.
early in his career, remember, he struggled against Gobert early in his career.
Well, Gobert had a block in Game 3 of that series. Nuggets get blown out in Game 3. It was as bad as any blowout they've had, even including this last year. They get blown out, and Jokic gets blocked by Gobert on a shot where Gobert meets it in his hand and slams the ball down on the ground, and there was a shot clock violation. It was one of the most dominant plays. If you just watch that play, you go, Jokic's getting murdered by Gobert, and that was the end of it.
AJ, who was the Avalanche player in St. Louis to score in the final seconds regulation to win it?
Darren Helm.
That was crazy.
Yeah.
That was nuts.
That was when we were talking earlier about like great moments versus great games.
Yeah.
That game was a grind. Wasn't like great, but the shocking nature of it, because you know the way that hockey goals kind of happen. You're talking 30 seconds left in the third period. It's 2-2. You think this is going into overtime, and the Avs make one last rush up the ice, and it's former draft pick Eric Johnson. That kind of starts all of it for the Avalanche. It was, and all of that together, you know, it doesn't look like anything, and then Darren Helm just steps into it and puts it right past Ville Husso, and
This is basketball and hockey, though. What we're
friendly
talking
moment.
about them is oftentimes it's a good finish or a good individual performance, but to say the whole game Sometimes a great
Yeah.
game is just a great fourth quarter, and that's what you remember.
Or
But
sometimes a great moment.
Or a great moment.
Maybe a moment you remember.
But I'll tell you one game that I will always remember, and I don't know where it was on the list when you guys made it, was Kadri's hat trick. Because to me, not only is there rivalry because it's the Blues, but there's a personal rivalry to it. And also kind of a calling out. Like
All the shit that was going on behind the scenes.
There's a lot of things being said online and social media and fans and signs and everything else. It's a pressure game. And it was one of the most badass things, and that an athlete is like, he scores the goal, and it's like, this is what's coming. Like, sit down. I'm not done tonight. And then he gets a second. Then he gets a third, and you're like, wow, that's a masterpiece. That's Babe Ruth calling his shot.
The hate trick is one of my favorite Avalanche moments ever because everything that went into it, you know, the collision with Binnington and his history and Binnington getting hurt, then throwing the water bottle at him during a post-game presser, and
I forgot about the post-game antics.
Yeah,
that was stupid. I mean, when you think about it, that was absolute lunacy.
Incredibly dumb. He actually just went on a podcast recently and talked about how he wish he'd done more.
Really?
Yeah. So
just double down on it.
not gonna walk that back at all. Wish he had done more.
I remember the press conference, and I was sitting there talking, and then he's like, "I think somebody just threw a water bottle at me."
Yeah,
and we're like, "What?" And that's exactly how it went.
Yeah, it was, and then all the hate that he received from crazy people in St. Louis, and then the police escort to the rink, and you had police stationed outside the team hotel. And, all the antics that went on. The Blues had set up the music outside the team hotel to try to keep the team up all night playing music. Blah 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 blah. And Kadri goes in there as villain number one, and the ultimate redemption story because his two previous postseasons as a member of the Avalanche, he was the guy who blew his coverage on the overtime game winner against Dallas.
Yep.
And obviously the suspension against the Blues meant that he never played in the Vegas series at all.
And I think Nas qualifies it. You asked what other Denver athletes have been sort of villainous. He's one of them. Everybody outside the Avalanche organization during that run, think what you want. He may have changed his game. He still had that reputation.
Right. You're 100% right. You mentioned the Game 7 of the bubble against Utah. Game 6 and Game 7 of the Clippers series, to me, maybe higher. So if you remember, Game 6 is a Jamal Murray 50 piece, and it's coming after the stoppage. Remember, they stopped. They were supposed to play. They stopped. And then he's on the court afterwards, and he breaks down into tears, and he gives this very heartfelt. You know, you could just tell the bubble was getting into everybody. The moment was kind of getting to everybody. The pandemic. This was Game 6.
Game 6.
So they were already on the comeback, and it's Game 6, and that one was pushing it to a Game 7, and you just think like, that was a Jamal Murray masterpiece. It was another 50, big game. And then Game 7, people forget this. They were down 15 points in the third quarter. It ended up a blowout. But it only ended up a blowout because they came back. I mean, it was a 30-point run, basically, that they had. And even though that game, if you look at the box score, it's going to end up saying it was a 15-point game. It was a close 15-point game that ended in a knockout. It was a fourth-quarter knockout.
I can argue again, when you're looking at series, the seminal moment of that series is when Marcus Morris got in Paul Millsap's face.
That's Game 5.
And Millsap wouldn't have any of it, and the series changed right there and then.
That felt like when the Nuggets grew up, that moment. Like when they were like, we're not going to do this.
Right.
You know, what I remember about Game 7 against the Clippers was Jokic having one of the best games I've ever seen him play. He controlled the game in such a way that I don't think I've ever seen. That's the first time I was like, holy crap. Jokic is like this guy because I think he had 30 points and 16 assists.
Yeah, it was just and it was easy. Like he would catch the ball, they'd send a double, and he would get the guy wide open. And he was
just manipulating the Clippers, and this is where the Clippers were like, "Holy!" Apparently, they're our daddy, and they were for a long time.
That's when I first saw a group of professionals melt down when Paul George hits the side of the backboard. Nobody on that team, they wanted no part of that game.
That's an all-time choke shot. Like if you just think about individual moments. It doesn't get worse than hitting the side of the backboard on a wide open three.
The birth of Pandemic P.
That's cool. Who was the Clipper that didn't play because he went to had barbecue at the strip joint and decided?
Man, who was it? Yeah,
Lou Williams.
Was it Lou Williams? I don't think it was Lou.
I think it was Lou Williams.
Man, maybe, is that the lemon pepper story?
Yes, it was Lou Williams.
Lemon pepper Lou.
You're exactly right.
The Clippers did not want to be in that bubble, sadly. It's the only thing that takes away, honestly, from the Nuggets run. Is it's kind of wild. What about Game 1 of the Sun series this last year? The reason I think of it is the Nuggets get past the Timberwolves. Nobody was counting on the Timberwolves to win. The Suns at that point, they'd only had KD for like 10 games before the end of the season, and they'd won them all. And then they get into the playoffs and they advance easily. And you thought, okay, are the Nuggets for real? Are they not? Nuggets blow them out. And if you recall, they go up 20 in like the third quarter. And Jamal Murray turns to the crowd during a timeout and says, "We're ready for this. We're ready for this."
I do recall
and that was the first time for me that I go, this is the year. It was the very first time. Now, I wasn't certain of it like I was at the end of the Lakers series, but it was the first time where I go, they are better than the Suns by a lot.
Is that the game or the series in which he and Mike Breen were doing the bang back and forth? Or is that the Lakers series?
No, I believe it was the Suns.
That was the Suns.
I think it was the Suns, but I think that the bang might have been Game 5 or Game 6.
See, the one game out of the Suns series I'll never forget is Game 6, where they actually stepped on their throats because that's not what the Nuggets do.
Right.
You know, what's been the Nuggets' claim to fame is they don't kill you. They killed them in that game.
The Nuggets had a little hate in their heart, that year. And I think they didn't have it this last year a little bit. I mean, they talk about Hunter versus Hunted, but I think there was the Suns swept them and the Lakers had owned them. And I think those two teams were like, it's personal.
Oh, yeah. It was personal. And that's you could tell with those. It reminded me of the revenge tour that the Broncos went on in 97.
Sure.
Where they beat, Jacksonville in the first round because they had beat them, knocked them out of the playoffs the previous year. Then they play Kansas City, and Kansas City had beaten them in a last-second field goal during that year.
Yeah.
And then they beat the Pittsburgh Steelers, who had also beaten them during the end of that season. So they went through this revenge tour as a wild card team, and then got to the Super Bowl. So by the time they got to the Super Bowl, it was like they were battle hardened. They were tested at that point,
Yeah. What about personal faves, AJ? It could be any sport. It can be Avs, but just like one that probably doesn't belong on the list, but it's personal for you.
I would say just after everything, because I covered that avalanche, the 48-point avalanche that led to them drafting Cale Makar, and I was there every day, and it was brutal. That team lost 60 games. 60 out of 82 games they lose. That's unfathomable in the NHL. And for them to go from that to then making the postseason the next year, that game 82 against St. Louis, the win and you're in, they had to do it. It was whoever won that game was going to go into the postseason as the 8th seed. St. Louis, all they had to do was get to overtime and they would have clinched. The Avs had to do it in regulation, and they did. And I remember that was a really tight-knit team, and I remember being in the locker room afterwards, and there were players on that team who were not in the NHL long after that, and they were just breaking down crying, and there was so much hugging, and Gabe Landeskog couldn't stop shaking my hand and being like, AJ, we did it. AJ, we did it. And so it was like, it was really cool to see those guys and how much it meant to them after the embarrassment of the previous season. That game right there, I mean, that personally, just how invested I was day to day in covering that couple of years of teams, going from the Waz Avs to that first year with Bednar, and then that next season, which was like, oh, hey, these guys might be something. And
you need those moments too to kind of buy into a team.
Yeah, and there would be moments along the way. The Game 5 in Nashville is the gutsiest Avs win that I can recall them ever having, where they had no business winning it.
Is that Mosier's guts all over the place?
It is. Yep. They scored 2 goals in the last 3 minutes to steal a game in Nashville, and then got smoked on home ice in Game 6. And then the next year was Cale Makar's first game. Cale Makar's first game would also be one of my favorites. And an 8th seed playing Game 3 at home against the number 1 seed Calgary Flames, who had been dominant all year long. And they had just stolen Game 2 in overtime in Calgary on a McKinnon overtime winner. And Cale Makar's first game, there's all the buzz, whatever. They score 3 goals in the first period, and Cale Makar scores on his first NHL shot to make it 3-0 against his hometown Flames. It was just all the kismet involved in it. And then the Avs went on and blew the Flames out the rest of that series. It wasn't even close. And it just felt like the addition of Cale Makar, where it was like, oh, this is a thing now. This is not... These guys are pretty good. These guys could be special. And it took some time, but they ended up being exactly that.
I love that you mentioned the guts all over the place, though, because a great call kind of makes a great game.
Yeah.
It makes
helps.
a great moment.
Really does.
Like, you think that I don't believe what I just saw.
Yeah.
Like the call is as good as the moment in a lot of ways that they're almost tied together.
Yeah.
What about you, Jeff? Personal fave that maybe wouldn't make everyone's list, but it's like a personal Morton favorite.
Well, I have far too many of the Nuggets, so I'm going to throw a curveball here. Personal favorite, It's a Broncos game, 1987. San Diego Chargers. It wasn't a competitive game, but it snowed probably about 2 feet. And I went with my dad, my grandfather, my uncle, and we arrive at the stadium. We're able to park right next to Mile High Stadium. That's how little people were there. I get out of the car, trip over the parking thing, like the cement thing at the beach, fall into the snow. I completely disappear. They had to dig me out of the snow. So we watched this game. I have never had so much fun at a game in my life. Blizzard conditions. People were sledding down the south stands. It was. You could find this game on YouTube. It's Broncos Chargers 1987. It's my most favorite moment at a sporting event, and I will always remember it. There's a lot of Nuggets games I will remember, but for some reason, that particular moment with family, with just how crazy it was and how little people were there, but how everyone was just really enjoying themselves. I'll never forget it. It's one of my favorite moment in sporting in Denver.
I was at a Broncos game, and I'm not even sure if the Broncos won the game, where we were sitting next to a guy who was about 3 rows back who threw the snowball. It was Broncos-Niners at Ray Wershing.
The snowball?
Yeah, the snowball at Ray Wershing that made him miss the kick.
It made him miss.
Yes, and we were sitting there going, is that legal? Are you allowed to do that?
Bill Walsh talked about that
Yeah.
game forever.
Yeah, and that came right behind us. And those are the games, as a kid, I remember. But as an adult, I go back to the game, and I can't remember how deep into the season. I think it was the 3rd or 4th game. It was the first season that Peyton Manning arrived in Denver, and you still didn't know if it was Peyton Manning or if it's reject Peyton Manning. Is he going to work? And they're losing in San Diego 24-0.
Yep.
They're getting crushed, and you're like, well, this season sucks.
Yep.
And then, boom, everything changed. They rallied, they win the game, and they ran off a streak, and that's when you knew Peyton's for real again.
Yeah.
That was a game.
It was almost like the turn him back on moment because it was the second half, and then there was the
Exactly
rest of
right.
the year, and that would definitely be on the
Chris
ultimate
Harris
list.
had a couple big picks in that game. I remember Eric Decker. That was a game where Eric Decker fell. Remember, out of thin air, he just fell on the line.
Yep.
So it had a lot of stuff in that game
Didn't
that
they
were
start that year 1-3, and then they
and then they went to that game.
and then they won 12 in a row.
Yeah, ran the table.
The Gary Harris game, winner game, to me, my favorite year of Nuggets history ever was the championship year. It's my favorite. My second favorite, I think, was like 2017-18. Early on, before they were over the hump, and you were just seeing little flashes of it. And that Gary Harris game was a TNT game. It was against the Thunder, who at the time were like could be a good, like everybody thought they were going to be something special. So it was kind of an upset. And that shot, I just remember it was one of the first games that felt big because everything the Nuggets did was so small. It was like we were watching, nobody else was watching. That was one of the first games where it was like, oh man, this team. It was a special moment. Gary Harris running off the court immediately and have to be dragged out by PR of, hey, you actually have to do TV now.
One of my favorite moments of it, parts of that was Cody Wise running. Yeah. Streaking faster
Incredible
than I've ever
play.
seen. Yes, I've never seen anyone run that fast in my life. Trying to track Gary Harris down.
Yeah,
it was amazing.
I was spoiled by my job because in that game we were doing this. We didn't carry it. TNT carried it, so they gave us courtside seats for that game and put microphones on me and Kyle Keefe. We were literally, if you look at the inbounds from Joker, he was inbounding it. We're right behind Joker.
Wow.
So we're watching this unfold and we're jumping around like fools. And I'm like, where is he throwing this? When he threw it, it looked, nobody's going to catch this.
Yeah.
He just knows how to, he knows where to put the ball.
Yeah. Also, Wilson Chandler gives a 2-arm shove to Russell Westbrook. If you remember Russell, he's going out there and he just like levels.
Do you remember
him.
Russell going after a fan? After the final moments?
I vaguely do.
On the sideline?
On the sideline.
In that baseline, After, I mean, when all chaos, everything erupted. I mean, he's going after a few fans here, to be honest with you. But that was one of them.
There's a couple of them. The Jokic game against LeBron, again, I think it was his sophomore season, the year that he was really breaking out.
The post-up game?
The post-up, just that one moment, though. But that game, Denver actually dominated the game, and that was against a very good Cleveland team. Yeah. And it was just another one of those ones where there's these little checkpoints along the way where you were like, is this special? Mm-hmm. Is this something before everything happened? And those ones to me are
Can I submit special. Something here?
Because let me hear it.
I know a lot of CSU fans are in like watch DNVR and stuff like that. Don't want to leave them out. you remember 1990 Freedom Bowl against Oregon Ducks?
Yes.
Bill Musgrave's
Oh, yeah.
Oregon Ducks.
I remember Desert Swarm when they beat Desert Swarm in Arizona. That was the bigger game.
It was amazing. They beat the CSU. This is the same season the Buffs won the title. They beat Oregon Ducks. Bill Musgrave, who I knew his parents very well, and that's another story. And it was a great game. It was a great competitive game. Unlike the national title game, which was terrible.
Yeah.
It was only known for the clipping penalty, basically. But that was one of the best nice moments. I actually felt happy for CSU. And Earl Bruce was the coach.
Yeah.
And it was just, I actually felt, I'm not a CSU fan, but it was like I always treated them like, I'm happy when you win. And I was so thrilled for the Rams that they finally won a bowl game after, I forget how long it was by that point. It was almost like 2 decades since they'd won a bowl game. And I was like, good guys, good job.
I have 2 more submissions. These are in the theater of the absurd.
So great.
Crazy shit that happens.
This is great.
And they both happened in Mile High. CUCSU, tear gas.
Oh,
I was on the field for
1999.
that. That was lunacy at its best. But I'll never forget it.
Yeah.
Because it was like, wait a minute, what is happening right
Yeah,
now?
it's a tear gas game.
Then the Bronco Raider game in which they're throwing snowballs and they hit Lincoln Kennedy and he runs into the stands.
Yes, hit him in the eye.
And I'm at both, and I'm like, what the hell is happening right now? Those were 2 games where I don't remember the games. I just remember what happened after the game.
Those are good suspicions. Well, you guys will check out the entire list is up on the DNVR.com. It's also on all of our social channels. We voted on them. We put a collection together, argued it through, and now we have the list of 25 best games. You can comment below and let us know what you think. What did we miss out on? What deserves a mention? And then give us your personal favorite, because maybe it didn't make the list, but it means something to you. Share those with us as well. Vic, Jeff, AJ, great panel. Appreciate you guys very much.
Pleasure being with you guys.
Absolutely.
Everybody else, hit that like button on the way out. We'll see you on the other side.
We all silly like the mayor.